Okay, YouTubers, there's one video that for the longest time I've wanted to make, and I just haven't seemed to get around to it. And it's about this Spanish flu thing. From my investigations of the Spanish flu and looking at all the details, and also having grandparents who had fought in the world wars, including the first, my great grandparents, and the Second World War, which was my grandparents, and gathering all the information I could actually on this particular pandemic, I'm beginning to think that there's more to it. I don't think there was a pandemic of a flu back in 1918, 1919. And the reason why, we'll go get into this with the video, is that they had been fighting in the World War for the past 4 years before getting all these symptoms, and it was the people who were fighting in the trenches who were having all these problems. So, for instance, the normal folk who weren't fighting in the trenches were not really having the same kind of flu symptoms as the people who were fighting in the trenches. But later, things started to get a bit strange. Another thing is, not only were there world wars going on, they also had children playing with asbestos, which is a sure-sign way of actually making people have flu symptoms. They had asbestos snow, for instance. I mean, why would you use asbestos snow? I mean, they didn't know. I mean, lots of millions of people getting killed with bombs exploding, buildings falling down, breathing in all that rubble, and taking in all the smell of dead bodies and decomposing rats and stuff like that, and they're getting flu-like symptoms. And then you've got the problem of people breathing in this asbestos snow and asbestos, toys and stuff like this. And the symptom of breathing in powdered asbestos is that your lungs will get infected and your lungs will display cold-like symptoms. So, all this is happening. They're breathing in all the dust from the exploding buildings, the buildings being turned into rubble. And if you remember, 9/11, when the buildings collapsed and people breathed in all that dust, they died a number of years later of lung infection. Was that Spanish flu as well? I mean, just coming out with it, I do not believe for 1 minute that the Spanish flu is what it seems. I think they were told a bunch of lies to cover up the governments for having so many people killed. And the reason why they died is because they were breathing in all the toxic shite from the wars. I mean, exploding artilleries, dust, the smell of decomposing dead bodies, and rats attacking them, the lack of nutrition and food, gunpowder, breathing that in all the time. And I mean, eventually what they did in the Second World War is they introduced air raid mask. So it wasn't as bad when they did that. But until before they did that, they had a number of different problems. They were breathing in the chemical warfare of the First World War. Now I know pandemics have actually existed in the past. I mean, the Black Death was a real pandemic, and that was basically because of the living conditions that people actually were living in. And in some ways, the Spanish flu, which is, I think, cover up for what happened in the World War, was because of the way people were living, right? And I don't believe that breathing in all this toxic shit is good for a person. I don't believe that it's a great idea for people to actually do that. I think when they do it, they end up with a number of different health problems. And we did see in 9/11 people dying like 4 or 5 years down the line after breathing in all the dust. Now imagine doing that every day for the previous 4 years, and then happening to show flu-like symptoms. I mean, they weren't really getting down to the nitty-gritty and finding flu particles back in 1918. It's much more likely that they assumed it was a cold, that they had caught some type of virus. I mean, there wouldn't have been many machines that could actually do it back then. I mean, maybe there were, but I don't think there was many machines that could actually show all the viral particles that may have been around. I'm not even sure they've actually, isolated even what they claim to be COVID, which I do think there is a cold about. I mean, some people in my household have had, coughs recently. Is it that serious? For most people, I think you're going to be okay. Some people might not be very good with it. They have immunological diseases, but it doesn't seem to be so serious at the moment. Okay, and even COVID, the one they were talking about, just seemed to me to be like government control. But I think that the alternative community and stuff like that should really investigate the things like asbestos being played with back in the 1990s, 1918s, 1918s, not 1990s, and them playing with toys and like that's full of asbestos, and on top of that, breathing in all the dust and the storm of World War, and whether that could actually contribute to what ended up to be people dying in large numbers of lung infection. Think about it. Was the Spanish flu real, or was it a cover-up for the people dying in the World War? Because who would fight again in the Second World War, future World Wars, if they know that your chances of death, even if you don't die in the pit from, artillery fire, you still got a good chance, a very, very good chance of dying from flus or colds because you've been breathing in all the toxic shit. And they know that because many years later they introduced their red mask. You see. Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now. See you later.